Welcome, everybody. We have with us Rabbi Kat Zavis of Beit Tikkun. Welcome, Rabbi Kat.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Tell everybody a bit about Beit Tikkun and how you came to be working there, like what it is,
Right.
and also how you came to be there.
Yeah. Beit Tikkun is a Jewish synagogue. We call it a synagogue without walls because we have members and participants from all over the world, actually. And so we do our services and events both online and in person. So it's now hybrid. And I came to be the rabbi at Beit Tikkun because I worked as an assistant rabbi at Beit Tikkun with the founding rabbi, Michael Lerner, and have been the rabbi since June of 2023, or around then. And so we're a congregation that does a lot of activism, and we really integrate spiritual consciousness, spirituality, and political engagement with the moral crises and issues of our time, and try to bring into our activism and into the discourse, let's say, in our society or the world, infusing both with a psycho-spiritual depth that I find lives very richly in Judaism, as it does in many, if not all, faith and spiritual traditions.
Really great. And what are some examples of ways that the psycho-spiritual traditions of Judaism support your activism and the activism of your congregation?
So one of the questions I think that I like to ask our community and that our community engages with is the why. Like, why are we facing this crisis of communication, let's say, this incredible division in our society and right now in the Jewish world? What is it that's fueling that? And of course, there's the external. There's the fear that's being, riled up by people and encouraged. Yeah. So there's that, but there's also our own internal psycho-spiritual needs. And we have needs for meaning and belonging and purpose. We also have needs for being understood and have a sense of being gotten, I like to say. And so how do those unmet needs, or let's put it more positively, how do our yearnings for that get mobilized in either positive, let's say, generative ways and less generative or harmful ways? And then how do we do the work that we need to do as individuals and collectively to harness our yearnings in ways that are generative and loving and co-creating? And so we could say that when our trauma gets activated and then everything's focused on our fear and our trauma, that's less generative than if we look at, oh, we're fearful right now. What are the tools or strategies we need to engage in to calm our nervous system so that we're not responding from a reactive, fear-driven, trauma-driven place? And so there's lots of sources we could look to help us navigate that, both within and outside of Judaism.
Yeah. And what are some ways that you offer that to the people, the members of your synagogue? Like I do a lot of, let's talk about our feelings and what's going on in our body. And what are some of the things that you offer? Or
so we practice prayer. I mean, I personally engage in prayer every single morning, and it's very nourishing for me. And so we have Shabbat services, and people come. And Shabbat services for me are a beautiful integration. So Abraham Joshua Heschel has two quotes that essentially say, prayer is our opportunity to engage in the complete awe and radical amazement of the miracle of life itself. And so just like take that in for a moment, right? Like it is miraculous that you are alive at this moment and that I am alive in this moment. Like, that's miraculous that there's trees flowering and blooming and leaves falling and, you know, water's flowing and it's all animals chirping and running around. Like, life itself is truly miraculously exquisite and beautiful and a miracle. So if we take that in, like if we really let that move us deeply, it impacts us. It can't help but impact us. And my hope and my intention in my prayers and my leading is that it impacts us in ways that, I'll say, make us, but I don't mean make us other than like inspire us so deeply and profoundly that it, like, we have to, like, we are compelled internally to then get engaged in the world so that the liturgical movement, now this is the other quote by Abraham Joshua Heschel, becomes a revolutionary movement, a movement that overcomes the negativity. This is not his exact words because I'm not remembering and I don't have it right in front of me, although it is hanging in my living room, but that overcomes the forces that destroy, this is what he says, that overcome the forces that destroy the hope, the promise, the vision. And so when I lead services and when we talk about Torah and we chant, I'm framing it all in these two quotes, if you will. On one hand, there's the awe and wonder and radical amazement of life itself. And when you tap into that, then our liturgical movement, our prayers, our discussions must become part of the revolutionary movement that overcomes the forces that destroy the hope, the promise, and the vision. Because otherwise, we're not going to have this miraculous world, right? We're watching it be destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
And
that's
also,
part of what I bring.
the other thing that I got from that quote is life by existing is miraculous, even if maybe a lot of the details maybe are horrifying
Or mundane.
or mundane. Yeah, yeah, both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like
and
it's
when I see, for me, I was thinking when I see the horrors in the context of the larger miracle, um, I have the energy to care, right? I don't go. It allows me to not go nihilist.
right, right. And it also, I think it also can bring out in us a sense of responsibility. Like, why we're here, you know, so we have some responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that brings me around to something else I was going to ask about. So, I know that part of my concern with fascism and now with genocide, a lot of it comes from being Jewish, right? There's like an extra sense of responsibility, right? Because of what we went through in the 30s and 40s, or our ancestors went through in the 30s and 40s. There's a special responsibility to prevent, similar disasters happening again. And at the same and in this particular moment, there's a special grief that not everybody, that a lot of the Jewish community is not seeing things that way. Well, would you share about like your analysis or your experience or how that's living for you and your community?
Yeah. So I'm fortunate that Beit Tikkun has always been a community that's been opposed to the occupation, that's been supportive of Palestinian liberation and end to the occupation. And so I've had that foundation, and I have been bringing the congregation along, let's say, a little bit further on this journey to really have a deeper understanding and analysis of the Zionist political project and the failures of the Zionist political project to really live what it supposedly was going to live, at least depends whom within the Zionist movement you talk to. Of course, I was going to say Herzl, this is exactly what the Zionist political project was going to lead to, and others, Jabotinsky and others, this is inevitably what it was going to lead to, and they knew it. But in terms of people who had a vision and a dream that I think many of us thought and had early in our lives, that in a Zionist political reality, you could have Jewish liberation and Palestinian existence. I'm not going to say necessarily full liberation or freedom. I'm not sure that was ever, I think abstractly that was something many people wanted and believed in and thought was possible, but it's not what happened. So whether it could have been possible or not is not really on the table. It's not what happened. So it's not possible. And what we now know is that the Zionist political project of the state of Israel, which is, let's be very clear, it's not a Jewish state. It's a state with a lot of Jews. Mm-hmm. And when Israel calls itself a Jewish state, it actually is a danger to Jews, both there and here, and around the world. So this nation state, this empire nation state, is enacting what empire nation states enact, which is power over and domination. And they're doing that now and have been doing it forever on the backs of Palestinians, literally on their homes and their bodies and their lives and their gravestones and their cultural sites and religious institutions. And so but I've been fortunate because helping my community understand this more deeply has not been a huge lift.
Because your community,
and that it was already there. There wasn't conversations around what Zionism meant, what it was looking like. Those conversations were not happening. It was just the rabbi was putting forth his view and people appreciated it and agreed with it. And so I've been doing more of a adding to the educational level and deepened understanding. And also, grieving and bringing a lot of different speakers and conversations. And so in terms of the community, that's been really beautiful and not like I said, not so difficult. In terms of my role in the Jewish world, I'm sure a lot of people are not so happy. I'm not so important, so you don't have to worry about it. I'm not like a huge name or anything, but certainly it's made, certainly some people are uncomfortable with it. And I believe it's a genocide. And if I believe it's a genocide, then the only question I can ask myself is, what would I have wanted Germans to do in the 30s and early 40s? And am I doing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. Over a year ago, I hosted a grief circle about what was being done in Gaza. And the majority of the people who came not only were Jewish, but were half Jewish. And what we kind of expressed was like, I feel like this is being done in my name, right? I'm half Jewish. And yeah, there were several other people there who were half Jewish, and being Jewish is important, but somehow but I don't know if it's the half part that had us never get caught up in Zionism. Like it just was not like, I hear about so many Jewish anti-Zionists who started heavily Zionist and then got information. That was never really there for me. And there's just an extra layer of shame, or there was, until I got to a point where I was like, no, Israel isn't Jewish. Right? It doesn't represent, yes, they're using me, they're using my name, they're using my existence to justify what they're doing, but they don't represent me. And and that was very freeing, but it took a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important, I think, for Jews to deconflate, that's actually a word, but undeconflate Judaism from Zionism, because there's such a conflation. And much more so here than in Israel, even. But there's this conflation of, if you're Jewish, you have to be a Zionist, as if Zionism is a religion or as if Judaism is a political ideology. Now, I happen to think that Judaism has teachings within it that are clearly political ideologies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's completely anti-empire, anti-imperialist. I think it's a political theology and ideology of building a world and a society where there are no needy in your land. That's right out of the Torah. Where every 50 years you redistribute wealth, right out of the Torah. Where you love the stranger, repeated 36 times in the Torah. What does that mean, to love the stranger? It literally means to take care of them, to create a just society.
Yeah.
So there is political ideologies contained within the Torah. And of course, you could argue Zionism as a political ideology of a state for only Jews is also contained within the Torah. But so, we can choose what we want to uplift. But if you create a Jewish society that doesn't uphold those other things that I was talking about, then eventually you'll be wiped off the land. You too will be punished, just like every other nation has been punished. So it's very clear in my understanding that this is what
says that, right? That if you do not uphold these values, you'll be wiped off the land. It's
oh yeah, in gory details.
It's not just a political fact that we're seeing play out, but yeah.
It says it in gory. I mean, this is what the prophets are prophesizing. It's not that they're prophesying about what might happen in the future. They're saying, you are not upholding these values. And so this is why we're suffering right now. Because they're prophesying when we're in exile, when people have suffered, because they didn't uphold the values of the Torah. So it has within it a political ideology, but it's a religion that has moral ethics about how to live our lives and spiritual and psychological practices to help us live our lives so we can enact, create, embody the vision of the world. That's really, in my vision, like a world of love and justice and liberation.
And before we started recording, you were talking about the pillars of truth. Was it truth, justice, and peace? And I was just remembering that my ex and I created our own ritual around Hanukkah because we were both raised relatively secular. And I was like, what does the oil represent? Why is it important that there's a light in the temple? And she said, well, in Zoroastrianism, light means truth. I'm like, I can work with that.
I like it.
But yeah, so just tell us about truth, justice, peace, and how they're
related. Yeah, and then I can say something about Hanukkah if you like, but that's a different way of understanding also. But I do love that. That's beautiful. So in the Pirkei Avot, which is the ethics of the fathers, but let's say the ancestors, but it is in fact fathers. But in this book, there's various teachings, and one of them, it's literally a book of ethical teachings. It's beautiful. And one of the teachings is that the foundation of the world rests on 3 pillars: truth, justice, and peace. So like when I was first reading this and thinking about it, I'm like, okay, that's beautiful. So there's like a triangle, right? Like 3 pillars and the world rests on it, and you need all 3. But as I've been working this year around Israel, Palestine, and interviewing people and having lots of conversations, I started to realize that you need all 3, but you need them in a particular order. You need to have an unpacked truth first, because without truth, you can't actually get to a just justice. You can't. Justice requires that we understand what we're making just. Where was the harm, the missteps, the miscalculations, the intended missteps? the unintentional missteps, the systems and structures of the society, what were those? And how do we repair and restore the society and community back to a place of shalem, a wholeness? Well, you have to know what the truth was. That's why, like, South Africa had a truth and reconciliation process, the truth. And it was so important that they gave people amnesty so they would fully speak their truth, both so people could have peace to know what happened to their family members who disappeared, but also because you can't begin to build a just society without understanding what was unjust. Mm-hmm. And the only way to understand what was unjust was to hear the truth. So you need the truth. Then we can start to look at, okay, now what does justice look like in the face of this truth? Like, let's just talk about the United States. How do we recreate a society that's truly just unless we really understand what happened with the genocide of the Native Americans, with slavery, with racial injustice, with Jim Crow, with all of the ways in which people of color have been marginalized and kept out of the economic and political systems and structures of our society for them and their communities.
Yeah, actually stolen from and then kept from getting anything
right.
back. Yeah.
So we have to really understand the laws and the way the system worked and the efforts by people in power to purposefully divide and conquer Black people from working class and poor white people, and all of these things that we've started to understand. Once we understand that, then we can start to really unpack what justice looks like. And now I'd say in the United States, some of us understand that, and we're not really implementing justice. Right? We're not really talking about real restoration, real reparations, real repair, real restructuring of our society, because that's scary and hard. I mean, how many of us are really willing to give up some of our comforts so that everyone else has comforts, right? I mean, none of us are going to do it until we know the society's doing it, probably, or a few of us are going to do it. So then we create justice. And once there's real justice, then we can get to peace. But we've done it backwards, really. We've lived in what we believe is peace because, you know, in our communities or in some communities, it's peaceful enough. So we're living in relative peace and comfort and ease. So we'll have a little bit of justice. We can expand the realm of what we think justice is. So we can maybe start talking about, maybe those laws, 3 strikes, you're outlaws, or other laws, or the racism in the criminal justice system, we can start to look at. But full abolition, no. But if you go to truth, but if you go to truth, then you have to get to full abolition, because then you understand how the prison industrial complex is part of and the continuation of slavery and Jim Crow.
I just also wanted to say, we require that there be peace before we're willing to allow any justice. So
Definitely.
People who say, oh my God, there's all this criminality, then we have to imprison everybody. Or, oh my God, there's,
Right, but if we understand the quote unquote criminality, right? I'm going to put that in quotes because if we understand it as a consequence of an unjust system and started to define it as that rather than as a disruption of peace, and then we look at it as, oh wait, but how did this happen? Like, what happened with the burning of Black Wall Street, for example? Like the intentional denial of the accumulation of Black wealth. Mm-hmm. Then we can look at it and understand it in a completely different context. So that's how I think about it.
That's a super powerful framework. Thank you. All right, we've got about 5 minutes, so I'm going to ask 2 questions I always ask at the end. One is, what can you tell people who are trying to get in touch with their purpose, or at least what is theirs to do in making a difference in the world?
I like to tell people to sit in quiet or go into the woods and talk, cry, sing, ask for guidance. And also ask what makes you light up. So, and I don't mean light up like, oh, watching football games make me light up, because I don't like that might may make you light up in certain ways, but I'm not talking about that. I'm like literally like get back to the Heschel quote, the miraculousness of your life.
Mm.
It's not just the miraculous of life, it's the miraculousness of your life. So if you're a miracle, which you are, which each of us are, if you're actually a miracle and you're here, this is the only manifestation of you. And whether we believe in reincarnation or not, this incarnation of you is it. So what is it that your incarnation is called to, inspired to, yearns to do in this world? And the thing is that everything in our society is set up so you will not explore that. So you will not ask that. Because if you do, you will stop being a cog in the wheel of the capitalist empire. So that's why I say you have to like seriously set time aside, and you might have to do it again and again and again to peel back the layers of the onion that tell you, A, you're not enough, B, you're not worthy, and C, you can't do it because, how are you going to support your family? How are you going to survive? That's not an unreasonable question, but that's why we have to change our society. Imagine if we had a world filled with people that were actually embodying the sparks of light, the sparks of divine consciousness that we all are, and we were actually manifesting our greatness. We would all be great. We would all be fine. We'd have enough food. We'd have enough of what we need. And we'd have abundance of purpose and meaning and love and community and belonging and connection.
It's really wonderful. And then the last question is, tell everybody about your free gift you're offering.
So the gift is a YouTube recording of me just recently speaking about unlocking divine consciousness, which has to do with the Parsha of Genesis. So it's a YouTube recording of me giving off a little teaching about Parshat Bereshit, which is really about this very thing. It's about God speaking to the universe and saying to the universe, unfold, please, unfold in your miraculousness, and give sparks of divine presence throughout the world and plant seeds throughout the world. So it's a short video teaching about that.
Powerful. Sounds very, very powerful. Thank you, Rabbi Kat. This was wonderfully thought-provoking, wonderfully caring. I got so much from this conversation, and I think everybody else will too. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely.